know I never used a prepared speech?
If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
All right. I just want to say welcome to tonight's debate. We're starting the debate now. I just want to give a quick shout out. Thank you to our moderator, Ben Helly. And I also want to give a shout out to Ben Rippey for being a fill-in debater for tonight on a short notice. But yeah, thanks again. Tonight's proceeds that people want to donate are going to GoFundMe for a little child that's having heart surgery. We posted the link on the channel. And again, just thanks for listening to tonight's debate. And thanks for bearing with us. We're learning as we go. I just hope you have a good time. Enjoy the show.
Thank you, Mike. All right, welcome everyone to another installment of Argument of the Month. I am Ben Helly, your host and moderator for the night. Tonight, I am joined by four excellent debaters, strong men from strong stock. We'll be discussing the pros and cons of the modern digital age and how people interact with each other within this technological medium. Our motion for tonight is social media is bad for society. Tonight, we're going to do opening statements by each side, followed by 5 to 10 minutes of interpanel discussion. After that, we'll do 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A from the audience. And after that, we'll do closing statements. We're doing the pre-debate poll. And after the debate, we will do another poll. And whichever side changes more minds wins the debate. Arguing in favor of the motion, we are privileged to be joined by Ben Rippey and Jeff Watson. Ben Rippey, aka the Ripcord, is known for his silver smartass pants, saving the lives of skydivers with baseball mitts, and his inability to commit to Facebook events. Jeff Watson is Jeff Watson. You can tell by the way he is. Please give a big round of applause for our debaters arguing in favor of the motion. Now on to the team arguing against the motion, social media is bad for society, Blake Rusted and Derek Dobesh. Blake Rusted is a regular social media user and avid enthusiast. Too boring and unattractive to be a social media influencer, but just impressionable enough to be social media influenced. Joking aside, follow him on Twitter at Blake Rusted. This introduction has been brought to you by your friends at Facebook. Derek Dobesh is a multi-platinum recording artist and junior curator at the British Museum of National History. He loves cooking and hates this motion. Please give a big round of applause for our debaters arguing against the motion. Time to get started. We decided before the debate that the side opposing the motion will go first. Please give Derek Dobesh a big round of applause and welcome him. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe.
When time starts.
That's a good point.
Good point already.
And Derek, your time starts now.
Good evening. The motion before us tonight is untenable, childishly simplistic, and completely unrealistic. But the idea that social media is a blight on the world has been growing ever more popular, despite the fact that there are no hard, irrefutable links between social media use and negative outcomes. The arguments against social media at this juncture in time are essentially speculation, and I'm sure we'll hear plenty of that from the proponents tonight. The fact of the matter is that social media is a force for good in society. There really are no limits to its reach either. From charity work to social causes to education to helping people feel a sense of connection with others all around the world, social media plays a fundamental role. The arts have benefited greatly from social media by becoming more accessible to the public. Businesses, both large and small, benefit, with startups not only getting their products in front of consumers, but also with finding people to help grow their businesses, such as audience favorite Hands Down. People who may have no one to connect with over their hobbies and interests can find like-minded communities to truly develop what makes them unique. And who could forget everyone's favorite online dating? Never before have you been able to be rejected by so many potential partners in such a short amount of time. What a time to be alive. I stand in opposition to this absurd motion. Social media has done more for all of us than we can even calculate, and all of that for free. Social media is a product of human creativity, kindness, and ingenuity, and is definitely a good for society. I would like to use the rest of my time to thank everyone for coming out tonight to beautiful Eastside St. Paul, Minnesota, and to welcome our online guests as well. I'm excited to have the opportunity to change your minds, and I hope you all enjoy the show.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, supporting the motion, we will be hearing Ben Rippey's opening statement. You have 2.5 minutes, and your time starts now.
Thank you, Ben. I myself am a social media user, and I started this debate sort of on the fence and decided to start doing some research into the topic. And I actually found, contrary to what I just heard from Derek, that there was actually a lot of scientific studies and research talking about the negative effects of social media. And I was actually rather appalled by the amount that there was. If you could sort of imagine that we had a device in our hands, per se, or in your pocket, a pocket watch, let's say. And let's say every time you checked the time, you open it up and you got a shot of endorphins right into you. And then as soon as you closed it, then you would all of a sudden feel worse than you did moments ago. So then you proceeded to open it up again. And you would sort of create this addiction and this feeling of depression that would start kicking in. And this is actually what social media is. That pocket watch is actually your phone. And it literally, we have several scientific studies showing that you do get a release of endorphins and that you do become an addiction to it. Several studies have shown that it causes depression, loneliness, sleep deprivation, low self-esteem, addiction. It makes people more toxic. It spreads misinformation. At the end of the day, it is simply a business model that only cares about making money and not about human welfare. The little good that Derek was mentioning just now is not any better than the real life alternatives that social media would create. In fact, it does it worse. It actually makes society worse, and that's why it is bad for society. Any sort of thing that we can imagine that would cause these things, depression, sleep deprivation, low self-esteem, they're bad things for society. They're bad things for humanity. And it's not just affecting a small amount of people or a little amount of people. It is affecting everyone, the majority of people. They say just 20 minutes on social media will create sad and depressed feelings. 20 minutes, that's all it takes in order for this stuff to happen. And there's been several studies on these things. This is why social media is bad for society.
Thank you, Ben Rippey.
Mute him.
Can I also get rid of the dingings? It's also getting like a little feedback.
All right. So thank you, Ben Rippey. We're going to move on to the next opening statement. That is going to be by Blake Rusted. He is opposing the motion, social media is bad for society. Take it away, Blake.
Hello, everyone. So happy that you all made it safely here today. You look healthy and non-corona'd, which is great to see. Let's start with a definition. Social media is defined as websites and applications that enable users to create and share content or to participate in social networking. Does that sound nefarious to you? Evil? Bad for society? What a pessimistic viewpoint that is. I hear that definition, and all I think of is a tool invented by humanity, for humanity, to better society. We use social media to communicate, share ideas, stories, and include others in our events and lives. To say that is bad for society should be insulting to everyone listening to me right now. I have enough faith in myself and the people I know to use social media as an effective and productive tool. We're able to easily connect with those not in the room today because of the social media platform Discord, which is a very powerful tool. We've even got a memes channel that's only purpose is to bring smiles and laughter to our friends. Oh, how society will suffer from such a thing. Thanks to social media, we can share ideas, feelings, problems, exciting stories, anything we want, anytime. We're connected to the lives of the people who matter to us. I'm here today to argue that social media is not bad for society. It's a tool that, when used responsibly, can yield unimaginable results. The proponents of the motion are here to scare you, to convince you that society and yourself are not smart enough or capable enough to handle this tool. Now, please stand with me and vote against the motion that social media is bad for society.
All right, thank you, Blake Rusted. Very efficient opening statements tonight. Last, we have Jeff Watson with his 2.5-minute opening statement. Jeff Watson is a proponent for the motion, social media is bad for society. Take it away, Jeff.
Hello, my name is Jeff Watson, and I am a proponent for the motion. And like others, I also do use social media, but I think as far as the overall aspect of social media, it is bad for society in the fact that there are lots of negative effects to it, in the fact that people say stuff that they wouldn't normally say face to face, which social media has empowered a number of people to do when given the aspect of social media. So why? Because social media gives them the power to not be who they are in real life. It is damaging our aspects of real life contact with real life situations with the aspect of social media, and that what we normally wouldn't say in real life to someone, we say on social media. That is the effect. That is the effect of the social media as far as examples go. Take any main case with viral events that happen, with any media events that happen that people grab onto, and they will not be themselves, like the George Zimmerman case in Florida. People just went crazy on social media. That is a big negative effect of social media on society, because they would say stuff without even checking if they're doing it right or doing it to the right person on social media, and cause and effect, they would harm people that are not associated with the said event. So that is hence the bad effect with social media on society in our current setup for how things are going. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff Watson. Okay, we just heard our opening statements, and we're going to move into the panel discussion. I think a brief recap would be that the side opposing the motion says that we can share our lives more easily because of social media. We can help local businesses with outreach. It's just a tool that people can use, and there are memes. The side for the motion says that there have been studies done that show that social media use as little as 20 minutes can cause low self-esteem, depression. Social media is used for misinformation, which is obviously bad. People act toxic while anonymous. So given these points, it seems you were the one who mentioned studies, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
So are these talk about these studies a little bit more?
Yeah. So if you, first link that you could pull up on Google right now, you could look up just like social media is bad for you. BBC has just a list of study after study after study after study. There's probably like 30 studies that they're quoting from around the globe talking about these terrible things that social media effects that it has on you. One study that I found was that 20 minutes on social media will create feelings of sadness and depression. If you cut down social media to only 30 minutes a day, you will immediately see an increase in your mood, well-being, sleep, self-esteem, socialness. The more social media you use, the sadder you will be. They found a direct correlation with that. They found a direct correlation with the amount of sleep and how well you're getting sleep correlated to the amount of how many times you log on to social media. I found studies where 60% of Facebook users are feeling inadequate and have poor self-esteem. So you look to the person to the left, look to the person to your right. One of those people has low self-esteem associated with social media.
Okay, so
I could go on, by the way.
I want to get in there so that we can give the other side a chance to respond.
I'm sure you could go on. The thing that you could go on about is how all of these studies fail to draw a tangible direct connection. All of them are simply showing correlation. That is the big issue with most of the research that's being done on social media. And something that we discussed in our pre-debate discussions is that there's not real tangible proof. We only see correlations. The tricky thing about correlations is that they can often be misleading. They can look like they're telling us one thing and in fact be telling us nothing at all. The same was said by a Master of Social Work, Jenna Christofferson, performing clinical research for St. Catherine's University, when she analyzed most of these studies and found that while there were correlations found in these studies, especially in relation to teenagers and children, there were not a large amount of there wasn't any hard connection, just correlation. And then when people were actually asked about it, they don't report the things that these speculative studies are finding.
I have
Okay.
response to that.
Ben would like to respond. What do you got?
So the same argument was purported by the tobacco companies when they were arguing about smoking is not bad. There's just high correlations that you get lung cancer. The fact of the matter, it is extremely hard to prove causation in any sort of scientific study or works. And that when you do have a huge amount of correlation between two events, that does indicate something is significant is happening there. Something very important is happening, and it eventually will lead to causation. And that is a very strong connection. And it's not just one thing. It's not just one up and happenstance thing is happening across the board. And you said there's no connection. Correlation is connections. Sure, there might not be a hard and set causation. We're just beginning these studies, but the correlations are strong. The amount of studies are numerous across fields, across globes. Like, this is not a fluke thing that's happening. This is real life that's happening to people. And it's a real thing. It's a real connection. And nobody has figured out any other thing that could possibly be causing it short of social media. And just like how the tobacco companies were pushing for this because they're trying to make money off of you, they're trying to get you addicted. Social media companies are businesses. They're trying to make money off of us. They're trying to get us addicted. They don't want us to know that we're addicted. They don't want us to know that we're feeling bad.
Respectfully, the thing about the tobacco, the analogy between the tobacco industry and social media is that we have actually proven scientific links between tobacco smoking.
And how long did that take?
I don't know.
It took like 50 years.
So what?
Do you have 50 years to wait before we figure out that we're dying from lung cancer?
Do
we want to wait 50 years of being
very
depressed?
Strong correlation for you. Back in the 1940s, there's this thing called polio that was going around, and it was a very big problem. And one of the correlations, one of the strongest correlations that they found to increases in polio was the sale of ice cream. It's because polio is a communicable disease and children played together more in the summertime. The social media and depression stuff, I mean, you can draw a correlation, but you're just talking about polio and ice cream until we got some hard facts.
Okay, I think we're about halfway through the panel discussion. I think it's been pretty good so far. I want to move on. I wanted to ask a question that I thought about. We haven't heard any real differentiation between the social medias. We heard mention of Discord during one of the opening statements, but are we all talking about social media in the same way? Do they have the same effect? Are there certain big players that are the worst for society? I'll just open that up to anyone who wants to take it.
I would say like some of the bigger players are platforms such as Instagram, Snapchat, things of that nature. Because if you look at the behaviors of kids these days compared to the kids when we were growing up, we didn't have the access to the instant amount of information that we do now, or even just the instant access to what's trending, what's hot, what we need to look like, what we need to be wearing, stuff like that. That is a direct correlation to how teens are feeling, especially when it comes to society image of what they're supposed to feel like, what they're supposed to look like, what they're supposed to be. That does cause them a severe amount of depression and will lead to suicidal thoughts for a lot of the teens, because they have studies with the depression and whatnot and causation of social media.
I'd like to jump in on that. So you bring up causes of depression and people feeling alienated on social media. But let's look at the opposite, where people who maybe have difficulties connecting with people, sometimes in these social media networks, they can find the most supportive, the most open people they will ever find. And you don't have to geographically be with this person. You can connect with people all across the globe that are like-minded, that are with you, that make you happy, that make you feel good. So for every story that you can talk about somebody feeling bad because of social media, you can talk about somebody feeling good because of it. And social media is not a cause of depression. There were people depressed before social media. They're during, they will be after. You talk about gossip, you talk about putting other people down. That happened at people's, when they meet up for coffee in the morning, somebody would put someone down. That's human society. Social media is a tool we use. It is not the cause of negative emotions.
So to piggyback off of what Griff is saying, and also to counter what Blake is saying, I think the biggest offenders are the ones that make us pretend like we are socializing. And that's what kind of Blake is saying there, is they're making us feel like we're socializing, but it's really pretend socializing. We're not actually getting those social connections, and that cat just spilled water all over the floor. So they're making us feel like we're socializing when they make us feel like we are actually connecting. But actually, in fact, social media, the more you use social media, the more you actually feel alone. There's direct correlations with this. And so those are the biggest offenders: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. They make us feel like we're getting information. They make us feel like we're connected, but they're not actually connecting us. What would be much better is to actually go out to clubs, to actually go out and text, call, be with these people.
I think that's a great point, Ben, and that's precisely what we did tonight over social media.
I'm not on social media right now.
But you found out
I'm being
about this because of
broadcasted
social media.
over a device that connects me through a phone. This is more of a phone media than like a website, and so this isn't as big of offender as those ones that pretend like they're socializing. This is basically a glorified phone. It's a giant phone is what we're using here, not a social media.
Do phones
site.
fund charities? I don't know, maybe,
but
it's going to take a lot more work than it does on social media.
The charities are going to happen with or without social media. In fact, I think they do the worst and we would have more successful charities in person, in real life, over the phone, and all that stuff. I don't think it
doubt
does it
that.
any
Yeah.
better.
I'll challenge that all day.
Ice bucket challenge. I mean, that would be a classic textbook
Yeah.
example.
Charities
That was
go viral today.
everywhere.
We do them way better without social media.
I challenge
Where
that.
you could say, "Oh, we did it once, ice bucket once. Oh, we did something else once." Like it's
One thing I'd like to bring up is that there's actually been some research done lately in that social media can actually be used to identify people who are struggling with mental health issues, specifically depression, before they've even sought out treatment, just because of analyses of how they're using the tool. In that regard, it can actually be a very useful early warning sign.
yeah, so it can identify the depression that it's causing. That's great.
So I want to step in right there because
Yeah.
the statement's been made that correlation is causation. That's the proponent's argument right now. Correlation is not causation. If two things correlate, that doesn't mean one caused the other. If people who are depressed spend more time on social media, that doesn't mean social media made them depressed. That can mean people who are depressed spend too much time on social media. So they get in these statistics as social media is depressing our people when it's depressed people who go to these tools.
The more you use it, though, the more feelings of depression you have. That's a strong correlation. That is as close to getting to causation as you can get. Without actually formally declaring, because it's going to take 50 years.
Respectfully, it's a logical depression.
Yeah,
We're going to take. It's going to take 50 years for us to formally, officially declare causation.
Well,
It's going to take a lot of time.
That's every scientific study. And if we're not there yet, you can't claim that. Correlation is not causation.
Is it worth spending the next 50 years feeling worse about yourself?
No.
Is it worth that? Is it worth that risk?
Here's what
I don't think it's worth that
going
risk.
to challenge you.
It's not causation.
So I'll
even
challenge
worth
you
that
right
risk?
now to say, quit blaming social media for these depressed people. Get to the source of the problem. Find out what they need. Don't say social media ruined these people. Find out what these people who are suffering need to get better.
I would agree that, and I think social media is making those problems worse. And social media is one of those other problems, and we need to be honestly addressing that problem now rather than waiting 50 years later to finally get these people their help. It's been shown to have symptoms of addiction, just like with nicotine, worse than nicotine and alcohol, in fact.
How many people are your studies suggesting are affected by this social media, this proposed social media depression issue? What percentage?
I know one study says 60% of Facebook users feel inadequate and have poor self-esteem. That's one such study I found.
Yeah, but they're teenagers.
They're not teenagers. These are studies across.
And
these
they're
are
still developing
across all ages.
And
These
you get all
studies
this
have been
stuff.
found.
I promise social media did not invent poor self-esteem.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it invented it. I'm saying it is one of the
It is
contributing
worsening.
factors, and it is worsening it. And that's not something we can wait 50 years to address. That's not something I'm willing to wait around for
I'm
to
not
get
saying like
around to
get rid
the
of it.
actual scientific official cause. I mean, when you're talking about causing, it's a very hard thing to officially prove in the scientific community.
Yeah, but
that takes years.
I think we're a little over on time for the panel discussion. I think that's a decent place to stop. And we can move on to audience Q&A. We have some audience members here who paid for tickets, so they're going to get the first go at asking questions if they have any. After that, we'll open it up to the live Discord audience if they have any questions. If not, we'll just chat a bit more and then move on to closing statements. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yes.
All right.
I have a question. This
Mike,
would
head
be
over.
Yes, this would be for the opposing side. Is I feel like social media is an amplifier, and how do you address issues with people that have hate speech that normally wouldn't have such a strong voice, but social media makes it so they have a platform to send out their hate speech further than they normally could, which maybe, I don't know if this is correlated or not, but like maybe this is why we're seeing more mass shootings nowadays in today's society. And I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
I'd just like to start and then pass it off to Blake. Real quick, the only thing that I would have to say on the thought, it's a very good question. Essentially, I would take issue with the idea that giving fringe extremist groups a platform is going to actually change minds. At the end of the day, they are fringe extremists with, radical opinions that no one cares for anyways. Having them on social media only serves to identify those people to the broader public.
Yep. So I'll add to that by saying I agree with Derek, and I'll say that I am a fan of the freedom of speech, and I am a fan of technology. And if that means that as we grow as a society and these two items come together and may come up, some of these issues may come up. I agree that giving a voice to hate speech is not good, but that just may be part of society growing as we figure out how to deal with these issues. I don't have the answer to that. And I do know that social media platforms do have measures in place to remove hate speech from their platforms. So I would trust those entities to keep working on that.
Response from the proponents?
I think actually social media does definitely increase this, not just in extremists, but in all of us, because how many times have we just been a victim of somebody just saying harmful words to us over social media? I think every single one of us can say people have said bad things to us, hurtful things to us that they would have never said to us in real life. I know even my own brother has done this to me. I know all of us have been a victim of people saying bad things to you that they would not say in real life. And so it affects that part, but even if you're not an extremist, I know for myself that, I'm a conservative. I subscribe to conservative things, and I noticed, over time, like, wow, these things are actually, they sort of make a straw man and a bad guy out of the opposing side. It's not necessarily hateful, but they make them seem worse than they actually are, because we're not actually seeing the real person. We're not actually seeing a real thought or opinion happening. And then in the flip side, I've also looked at, liberal political groups as well. And I go, wow, I don't believe those things that those memes are saying. Like, they're making me out to be a bad guy, and making up the sort of person. And so it starts creating this environment of hate. And I think that's one of the many reasons that our political climate is as hateful as it is right now, because of social media just amplifying and isolating ourselves and not allowing us to have real in-life personal thoughts and discussions with people that we would not otherwise have.
Yeah, because like piggybacking that, it just gives people the power. Like what you normally would hear just from people down at the bar versus at your computer is exponential. And not only that, it's like with social media, it gives you the power to create accounts that aren't even you on top of that. So you can make it seem like you got people that are agreeing with you in whatever you're saying, especially if you're attacking somebody. You can just amplify that. And a lot of that people would say like, oh, I just turn it off. Well, that's easy enough to say and do, but it's still there. And it's still viewable for other people to see, and they'll read it and they'll constantly be reading it and seeing it and maybe even adding to it. And then so that next day you go actually see them or see someone who saw it, they'll still be talking about it. And it just amplifies that exponentially.
Okay. Next, let's move on to another question from the audience.
So, I'm Brandon Heidelberger. I want to hear from both sides about the Russia influence on election through social media. It's kind of both your sides' opinion on it.
Okay, do we have any volunteers to take that first? Just thoughts on the 2016. I'm assuming that's what you mean, Brandon. It's the 2016 election. Okay.
Yeah, that is a big proponent of with the fake social media accounts, because that's what they were doing, was adding the fake accounts and putting out all the stories on those accounts and then sharing it that way. And once someone will see it and they'll think, oh, maybe that is real or not, but then they'll start to see it on the mainstream sites in the mainstream because it gets shared so much. That's what made it more believable, even though it wasn't. But just because they started with the third party, the smaller party, and just kept being with the trolling accounts, the fake accounts, and it just exponentially created it to a point where it just seemed believable to that. Now the mainstream media has it.
Yeah, so I would, to answer that question, I'd say since the dawn of man, there have been people out there to try to trick you, to try to manipulate you, to try to get you to do something that they want you to do. And it should be on us to be smarter, to try to catch these things, to educate yourself, to do your research. And if anything, I think it's shown that we should have a culture that is more proactive in learning and gaining knowledge and becoming smarter. I think it shows that.
I think that's the problem right now with society is that this is the main social media. Social media is the main source of people's news, their learning, and their knowledge. That's how they get their information. It's spreading, and it allows greater spread for misinformation because you can create so many more accounts. In real life, there's only one of you. And as soon as they realize, oh, like, Griff is a liar, don't trust him, like they know that. But if Griff is creating 20 fake accounts, his influence now is so much bigger, and that spread of misinformation is so much greater. College professors all the time say, don't use Wikipedia, don't say Wikipedia. They really should say, don't get your news from Facebook and Twitter. Like, don't use Facebook and Twitter all the time. And yet that's what we do. That's the main way we get our news. And it's a sad reality of the situation. And we could hammer this in all day and all night. And this is the problem why social media is bad. It's a reality. It's the fact of the way things are. And it's not something that should have this influence on our lives, but it does. That's why it's bad.
I'd just say that, to throw Twitter under the bus on all that, to me seems silly because Twitter is literally coming from human beings like Donald Trump, like the Pope, like people on the ground who are actually living these live news events. So if anything, they're actually better than, historical traditional news. And to answer the question directly rather than dance around it, the issue of Russian interference with the 2016 election is not an issue that is caused by social media. It is an issue of national security that has just essentially been completely ignored for the sake of throwing a circus. We shouldn't be blaming American entrepreneurs and Americans for interference in our elections when we have a foreign power directly trying to affect them. Quite frankly, it seems like it's like an attack. It's an attack on American society, and to say that, well, Facebook existed and we got attacked, just seems silly to me. Like Facebook's not the problem there. The problem is Russia. You want to which one do you want to deal with? You want to deal with the real problem or the fake one? If you get rid of Facebook, they'll just keep coming. So they're not going to stop because we get rid of Facebook.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that was a great question. We got a question from our audience here. Does the good outweigh the bad on social media? Example, a GoFundMe for someone trying to find a family member they haven't been in contact with for a long time. Oh, that was just a thought. That wasn't a question.
Well, that's his question.
Okay. Does anybody want to respond to that point or question?
I'll respond to that. I would say the good definitely does not outweigh the bad. In fact, I think there's very little good. We don't think back to the days, those terrible days when we didn't have social media. Oh, they were so hard. We couldn't go fund babies back then. What are you talking about? We would just go over to that person and give them money, right? Or we would spread the word to the entire town in person and ask for money. And when you go up to somebody and you say, hey, my friend, my family, my niece, my nephew, they have, heart they need open heart surgery, it's a lot harder to say no to their face. And we got a lot more money doing things that way. And we don't think about the back in the days when like, oh, I could never make any friends before Facebook was around. It was like, no, we made a lot more friends before Facebook was around. We're like, oh, I can never connect with anybody. We connected with people a lot more when Facebook wasn't around. There is very little good, if any at all, that social media is giving us. Like, it's mostly bad things it gives us. It gives us depression. It gives us loneliness. All these things that they tell us that they're good at doing, we used to do way better. In fact, they've made it worse about how we do it.
We are running a bit low on time for the Q&A, so I'm just going to give it one more response from either one of the opponents.
Yep. So
motion.
Yep. I want to say again that social media does not cause and it did not invent depression. I will keep hammering that down. And as far as causing more good than bad, I definitely do feel it causes more good. It's a useful tool for humans to use. We communicate with people, we share ideas, we share events, and that GoFundMe that Mike posted is such a great example of getting it out to people that would not normally see it. And yes, people from the neighborhood could come and help, of course. Again, social media didn't invent anything. It's just making it easier for us to do things with less time, less effort. On our lunch break, we can say, oh, look at this GoFundMe. I'm going to help this person because I just saw this right now. We are able to utilize the tool of social media to do better in our lives more efficiently. That's what it is, a tool for us.
All right, that concludes the Q&A. So now we're going to move on to closing statements. We're just going to keep the same order as before. So we're going to start with Derek giving his 2.5 minutes, if he wants to use all that time, closing statement, and then we'll move on. Derek, the clock starts now.
Dear brothers and sisters, ever since the internet first became available, the church has always sought to promote its use in the service of the encounter between persons and of solidarity among all. With this message, I would like to invite you once again to reflect on the foundation and importance of our being in relation and to rediscover in the vast array of challenges of the current communications context the desire of the human person who does not want to be left isolated and alone. These words were spoken by our current Pope, Pope Francis, on the World Communications Day in 2019. They were an opening to a longer speech, and quite frankly, his words ring true. Like, the internet, and more specifically speaking, social media, have been one of the greatest and most powerful gifts that humanity has at its disposal to spread good and evil. True, good and evil. It's possible. But the question is, are people fundamentally evil? I don't think so, not one bit. We're talking about social media as a tool. We're talking about it as a magnifier. We're talking about the effects it has and the effects it doesn't have. And quite frankly, I think what we really need to look at is the long term in how do we see the world moving forward? Do we really see a world where social media goes away? Do we really see a world where it's like we don't continue down the path we're on? I don't think that's realistic. I think that the world, that we're moving towards is going to be more and more intertwined with social media. And quite frankly, I'm comfortable with that because of all the things we've talked about, the helps, the assistance to all aspects of mankind. I mean, it really is boundless. The sky's the limit, and social media helps us get there so much quicker, so much easier, and it democratizes that access because any human being on earth can use it for free.
Thank you very much, Derek Dobish. Big round of applause for that. Next, we will be hearing Ben Rippey's closing statement. Or I'm sorry, we're going with Jeff Watson's closing statement. And And Jeff, your time starts now.
So in closing, like I said, it's not that we're just saying that social media invented depression or invented anything. We're just saying that it amplifies that depression. It amplifies anxiety, and it amplifies what it means to be somebody else, because that's what social media does. And it's not saying necessarily to go away, but it's just, you got to look into it right now as the cause of the depression, mainly because it is increasing for the kids because they see it all the time. And like you say look at it on lunch break, but in reality, we're doing it way more than just at lunch break. We're viewing it all the time. It's constantly at our fingertips. It's constantly there. So we constantly know what's going on around us. And that's just adding to our depression, because if we're not meeting up to those standards, we see it at our fingertips, whether we want it to or not. It's there. And that's what causing it, is just amplifying. It's not inventing it. It's just adding to it and making us more prone to be depressed, feeling lonely, feeling incompetent, and in some cases, suicide.
All right. Thank you, Jeff Watson. Next, we're going to hear Blake Rusted's closing statement. Blake, you have 2.5 minutes. Time is yours.
I have found friends, new ideas, entertainment, even my fiance through social media. I and others have used social media as a tool to have extremely beneficial impacts on our lives. So here's the problem with tools. Sometimes it's easier to blame the tool than the user. Addictive personalities are a reality, and social media is an effective way to bring people suffering from this affliction to the surface. So I ask you, do you blame the hammer when the carpenter hits his finger? Do you blame the car when the drunk driver crashes? Do you blame the gun when the killer fires it? I have spoken to you tonight to urge you not to blame the hammer for the smashed finger, not to blame the car for the drunk driver, and not to blame the gun for the killer. Let's focus the discussion on what is needed for the people misusing the tool and not the tool itself. So please join me in voting against the motion that social media is bad for society.
Thank you, Blake Rusted. All right. And to give the last closing statement, Ben Rippey, you have 2.5 minutes. Take it away.
Thank you. So it's not that we want to completely eliminate social media. I don't think that's a likely scenario of the future. But what I am saying is, since there is such a strong correlation between social media and feelings of depression, that we should really limit ourselves and really avoid using it as much as possible because of that such a strong correlation. And that's why it's just bad for humanity. When it has this effect on humanity and on people as a whole, we should limit it. And the goods that my proponents were saying, they really aren't that good. It does not make more social connections. It doesn't make it easier. It fakes being easier. It fakes those social connections, which is what leads us to those feelings of depression, which leads to those correlations that we see so strongly after study after study. And that's what we should be striving for, is when we start to eliminate that distraction social media is creating and those fake social interactions and start really creating real and true personal and social connections, that's how we're going to start feeling better. That's how we're going to start making friends. That's how we're going to make true and real social change in the world. And that's the world I'm advocating for. So I really strongly suggest limit yourself to your social media because of all these strong correlations, because social media is bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben Rippey. All right, I'd like to ask for just one more big round of applause for all our debaters tonight. Okay, now that the debate has concluded, I think we'll post the post-debate poll in Discord. If everybody who voted on the pre-debate poll could post or vote on that as well, that would be very helpful. We're going to give a couple minutes for that, a couple minutes for our debaters to catch their breath and reorient a bit, and then we'll have the results for you in probably about 10 minutes. Thank you. Woo! All right, everybody, I hope you're ready to hear the results of the poll. We've got the pre-debate poll and the post-debate poll. I will post the pre-debate results here momentarily.
Momentarily.
It looks like 50% of respondents said that yes, social media is bad for society. And after the debate, it looks like 50% of respondents said no, social media is not bad for society. So it looks like the side opposing the motion, Derek Dobesh and Blake Rusted, win the debate. Congratulations, Derek and Blake.
Woo! Damn Russians.
Damn Russians.
Yeah, Russian trolls infiltrated.
Thanks for joining, everyone. I hope you have a great night. We are going to go on mute now, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.